All right. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Loners. We hope you all are doing well. Let us know what the weather's like wherever you're from.
ASMR.
All right, this is episode number 129. Run it.
Let me see. Never mind, we don't support Chris Brown in this house. What episode is this, you said?
129, guys.
129.
Thank you guys for coming back over here. If you haven't, please jump over to our vlog channel. Go check out all our videos, starting from the very first one. Just watch them all through.
Yeah, because we haven't posted in 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
But there's other stuff.
Exactly. All right, so today we're going to do a video called Americans Are Taking Over Europe. It's about 2 weeks old, and it's by a channel called Into Europe. I'll leave the original in the description. But let's see how we're taking over Europe.
If you walk in the streets of Valencia, you'll pick up English, but not just any English, American English.
Speak the right way, the American way.
Valencia is one of the most international cities in the whole of Spain. It's a tourism hotspot, it has multiple universities and English language schools. And it's becoming one of the favorite destinations for Americans in both Spain and in Europe. And I'm here to investigate a topic that you might have seen on YouTube before. There is an entire subgenre of YouTubers praising the European way of life and
All those
escaping the
people, like
United
we've
States.
done.
Yeah, I know.
Reacts
I
to.
initially thought this might be just a media trend, since complaining about your country seems like a sure way to get those sweet clicks and views. But when I took a look at the numbers and started talking to Americans who made the move,
They still have their homes in the U.S.
I learned that it's not just the vloggers that are coming here. Instead, it's the story of what seems like a growing trickle of Americans emigrating to Europe. New visas, online work, and an increasingly English-speaking Europe have lowered the threshold to come, while the United States is becoming a more unhospitable country.
On the latest
Yeah.
outbreak of gun violence.
The trafficking of fentanyl and other synthetic opioids.
The Supreme Court ruled to end Roe v. Wade.
While the United States has prided itself on the promise of the American dream and for many remains a land of opportunity, could it be that its neglect of social policy is coming back to bite it? And might Europe's bet on quality of life finally be paying economic dividends?
Yeah,
Since it-
I think that's exactly what's happening. What are you saying? Let us know what you think. And if you guys are, I'm sure you guys are welcoming to Americans coming over, but I think it's like you want the right kind of Americans over there.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't want a bunch of transplants coming and settling on our
But I can't
area.
see.
And then, because it could, how things work here, I'm sure it works other parts of the world. Like,
Yeah.
the more demand, the more expensive things become.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Do you guys notice that? I know in Portugal, I've seen some comments about some of the Portugal videos that it has been increasing the cost of living a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
And this may sound dramatic, but this is borderline like modern day colonialism. Like,
Moving over there.
yeah, because even though you're not directly forcing people out, if it affects their economy,
It's
they're
going
gonna be
to
forced
eventually
out.
push them out because
Yeah.
they can't afford it.
But that's my American mindset thinking that. I don't know how economics work in other parts of the world, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true.
So it could not make a difference at all. I don't know.
Its founding, the United States has been a country of immigration, with more than 1 million people migrating to the country in 2022.
Damn.
But the United States is also becoming a country of emigration. Before I go out into the city, I have a couple of graphs to show you to give you an idea of how significant this transformation is. Americans have historically not been the globe-trotting types. After all, the United States has everything you could wish for: cities with varying climates, diverse geography, and jobs and opportunity aplenty. In fact, in 1999, The Economist wrote that educated Americans were the least likely people to leave their country. But over the past 2 decades, the number of passports issued by the United States has boomed, particularly after the 2007 financial crisis and what I can only assume is the aftermath of the
election.
2016 US presidential elections, which was won by Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Today, some 40% of Americans have a passport, and some have used it to cross the Atlantic to make their way to Europe.
It
if
is
you're an
wild that from our perspective that Trump became in office when we were like in our early 20s. So it wasn't, we can't see it outside of a perspective of like, oh, we were in our early 20s. We want to get a passport and travel versus like something going on with America.
Yeah.
So
That was so. It feels
it just
like
lined up for us like that.
it feels like that was yesterday, man. When Trump became
I
president.
thought it was a joke, but I guess not.
So the data I found on American migration is imperfect. It turns out it's quite hard to get a precise number. I thought of looking at the number of registered voters, granted visas, or permanent residents. For the latter, it shows a steady increase in Americans having permanent residency in Europe, with their favorite destinations being the south of the continent, particularly Spain, Italy, and Portugal. If we look at other data, there would apparently be 200,000 Americans living in France alone, versus about 40,000 if you look at the number of permanent residents. But I have a hunch that the number of Americans is greater than that for the whole of Europe, especially because of the time it takes to get more permanent status. Some Americans basically move between European countries every 90 days while they wait for the slow wheels of Europe's bureaucracies to do their work. Yet throughout all these different metrics, one thing is clear. The number of American expats migrating to Europe is increasing. And there are multiple, often personal stories for that. But they boil down to Europe simply being a better place to live. Now, I could go through all the reasons and show you graphs for why that is, like social mobility, cheaper education, access to healthcare, maternity leave, or work-life balance. I could also show you maps of walkable cities. Yeah, I know that it's kind of a Euroflex. Others come to leverage this, the American dollar, through geo-arbitrage.
There's something called geo-arbitrage, which basically means you can take what you earn in one place and move to another place that's cheaper and leverage it.
Since Americans earn more in absolute terms and the euro has fallen relative to the dollar, American incomes and savings can get more bang for their buck here. But based off of the people I've talked to here, there is one reason that stands out more than the rest.
Do you notice that in Europe? I don't feel like our dollar goes farther there.
It does a bit. Yeah, it does.
You think?
It did in Spain and stuff. It did.
I was also worried that if I went to a grocery store, was I going to get shot?
We know 5 people in the Seattle area. They were shot in a parking lot.
Well, this is a safe place to have kids.
Carnage in our nation's schools has become painfully repetitive.
Who would have thought that keeping themselves and their kids safe would be so high on people's list of priorities? And as it turns out, European countries are more than willing to oblige these American migrants. They're educated, seen as culturally compatible, and while there is definitely a pool of retirees coming to enjoy a golden retirement, according to the stats, most are young and potentially valuable contributors to Europe's aging societies and government deficits. In the south of Europe, Spain, Italy, Portugal, and Greece have all set up digital nomad visas with substantial tax concessions in the hope of attracting remote workers to increase their tax bases. It's perfect for remote working Americans doing geographic arbitrage. But it has caused some backlash. Not just Americans, but also Europeans like myself that have come to live here, raise prices on rent as internationals are able to price out locals, like in Portugal, where housing prices have increased by 40%, which has been blamed on mostly Americans coming to the country. And it's been trial and error to find winning recipes for these countries. Portugal scrapped its golden visa, which allowed free access to the country for a $600,000 investment, after mostly American investors started hoarding real estate and drove up housing prices. But in the north of Europe, it's a different story. After all, it doesn't make a lot of sense to live there as a digital nomad since life is much more expensive and the weather is just terrible. Instead, these countries seem to be attracting a different cohort of Americans who are integrating much more into local economic life. In Amsterdam, one of continental Europe's more cosmopolitan cities, it's actually hard to find Dutch-speaking waiters. Settling down for Americans is much easier there, where English fluency is greater and where there are actually English-speaking jobs, owing to the export and trade-oriented economies of the North and the American investment in those countries. Recently, this has even created problems for top-tier jobs at the EU when Americans apply. And while the benefits of those migrants—
I'm not trying to I don't know. I was gonna make a joke.
What? Just say it.
I just find it funny that here, the white, like a lot of like patriots, I guess, super white people, they hate Mexicans because they're taking our jobs, and then like we are those people in other countries. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but they might not have as much problems with labor force as we do.
Yeah, but then he was even saying like, like there's jobs, whatever the fuck. I mean, living here, I don't think it's nearly as easy to get a job as people think it is.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially now.
Yeah.
It definitely once was, but I don't feel it right now.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? But you're saying over there's like
There might be more jobs available that aren't
I
like
don't know.
taking it from other people. I don't know though. You guys let us know. But
no. But he was just saying how like the culture in Amsterdam is kind of shifting in the tourist areas.
yeah, a lot
because-
more English speaking and other stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but like I don't want to.
You're saying you want to get like a
Amsterdam,
natural experience where it's like
which I'm not gonna get in tourist areas. But
that's what
still,
I'm saying.
Like,
Yeah. If we were to
I
go
don't
to
want an
the
American server if I'm going to Amsterdam.
well, yeah, I know, and I'm sure you can go to smaller businesses that probably have that, and
Of
then also if you
course.
go out to other little neighboring.
Still, but like
cities.
I don't know. I wouldn't feel like, oh wow, they're really accommodating. Like I'd be like, why the fuck are you here? Like
Yeah, I know.
I don't know.
Are clear, as with other immigrants, there's one important question. Will they integrate locally? After all, in
Right.
Spain, like much of Southern Europe,
Hopefully
there's little
not.
hope for additional American workers to integrate locally into the economy.
Obviously, you could work for a Spanish company, you know, there's that back door, but that's extremely difficult because even Spaniards can't work for Spanish companies.
Oh shit.
So the people coming here remain in a parallel, internationally focused economy, whereas in the north of the continent, where the economy and society is much more English speaking, there is much more hope for Americans to fit in. Especially since on the cultural side, Americans are notoriously bad at other languages and may, like many expats in new countries, judge that their English is enough to get around. But there's something I wanted to know. Is this American migration a potential silver bullet to some of Europe's biggest problems, like its place in the global competition for talent and for its aging population? Well, when it comes to talent, there are these lofty articles about the death of Silicon Valley and how engineers may relocate to Europe, as well as new startup laws in Spain or France, where European countries hope to attract global and American talent to bring much needed dynamism to their economies. But so far, American founders haven't flocked to Europe. It's more the disillusioned American upper middle class that is coming to the continent. European bureaucracy and taxes means that the United States are still the kings of business. But where it could also have an impact is on the emigration of Europeans to the United States. There are fewer Europeans applying for permanent residence. However, since it's mostly young people that immigrate, this may also be a result of an aging Europe. There are just fewer people in the age group to emigrate to the United States. So once again, this is a bit inconclusive. But what remains true out of all of this is that 40% of America's 230 million people are entitled to European citizenship through ancestry. Some will likely choose to vote with their feet. That's a pool of educated, culturally compatible workers that European countries could potentially tap into. But as it happens, it also is likely to reinforce the cultural and family bonds between both sides of the Atlantic. And it's something that could have deep implications on the languages spoken in Europe, and particularly how dominant English would become. While the volumes are relatively small, this first wave of American immigrants is a sign of what could potentially come. While right now, Europe seems to be a refuge for Americans looking for a better life rather than economic opportunity, and there are economic benefits to reap, if European countries can get their act together and offer a more friendly business environment, then it's possible that it's not just the middle class that would jump ship. But what do you think? Is offering good quality of life a suitable strategy? And can countries like Spain offer enticing offers to attract wealthy, educated, and entrepreneurial Americans? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. In a previous video, I've talked about Europe's productivity challenge compared to the United States, and looking into why the US has been so successful economically. It's part of a larger story of the diverging economic fates of Europe and the US. So go check that one out. And once again, I would like to have...
All right. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I do think a lot of people are moving from the US to Europe. I know that we would definitely consider it at a
still
certain
have to
point.
pay taxes here.
Yeah, that's the other
unless
thing.
you give up your
But
citizenship.
I also want to know because
and I don't think we'd ever move there permanent.
probably
I
just go visit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind staying a few months, but I don't think I would ever permanently move to Europe.
Yeah. It makes sense.
Personally.
Well, it just
Yeah.
makes sense because you'd have to pay double taxes. Yeah. If you
Unless
were.
you give up your passport, which I
Yeah.
will not do because these people are not going to.
I've heard it's a pain in the ass to get it back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not shocked. What the fuck is that?
Yeah. But I don't know. Let us know your opinion on this too. Like wherever you guys are from, if it's affecting you negatively or if you actually welcome it and stuff like that. Just let us know.
Yeah.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. And
Thanks
watch
for
our other
watching.
videos. Peace.